Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking on a topic that, it sounds deceptively simple.
Oh, very much so.
But when you actually scratch the surface, it reveals this whole world of incredibly complex, precise chemistry and technique. We're talking about confectionery.
Right.
Specifically, this magnificent collection of recipes that focuses on one singular classic sweet treat.
It's a truly amazing collection. I mean, the work that Jatin Agarwal put into this, it's like a culinary catalog. It showcases 50 entirely distinct ways to create the same basic creamy confection.
50, that's the number that got me.
Yeah. And when you see that kind of breadth, the mission, it's not just about exploring different flavors anymore.
Right.
It becomes about using all these variations to really understand the fundamental mechanics of sugar, heat, fat, and texture.
Exactly. I mean, the list spans everything you'd expect, like chocolate and nuts, but then it goes into these highly sophisticated flavors like amaretto and cardamom, seasonal twists like eggnog, and then some truly astonishing structural bases.
Yes. The structural surprises, those are definitely worth waiting for.
I bet.
But we should probably hold off on the savory binders discussion for just a little bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might lose the thread of the fundamental science.
Okay, fair enough. Let's unpack this. The sheer number of recipes just proves that this humble sweet is actually a canvas for endless creativity.
It is. But it's creativity within very rigid constraints. You have to achieve that perfect balance of crystal size and that creamy texture.
So our deep dive today is focused on analyzing two completely parallel paths to confectionery mastery. You have the demanding traditional methods on one side.
And then the quick, reliable convenience of the modern shortcuts on the other.
So where do we start?
Well, our first and I think most important segment has to address the cornerstone of traditional confectionery and, frankly, of all sugar work.
Okay.
And that's precision temperature control.
The candy thermometer.
The dreaded candy thermometer. The vast majority of the classic recipes in this collection rely absolutely on hitting what's called the softball stage. And that's a notoriously narrow thermal window.
How narrow are we talking?
Generally, it spans 234 degrees Fahrenheit to 240 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, but that window, it just seems so tiny, only 6 degrees.
It is. It's incredibly precise.
So what's actually happening to the sugar in that tiny little range?
Right. So the softball stage it's all about water content. It's basically telling you exactly how much water is left in your sugar syrup. When you start, you've just got sugar dissolved in, milk or water. As you boil it, that water evaporates and the sugar gets more and more concentrated.
So if you go past 240.
If you boil it too far past 240 degrees, you enter what's called the firm ball stage. And that just means too much water is gone, and the candy you end up with is going to be stiff, brittle, and dry.
So 234 to 240 is the sweet spot.
Literally the sweet spot, yeah.
Yeah.
The sugar concentration is high enough that it'll set, but there's still enough moisture left, about, say, 18 to 22% residual water, so that it stays soft and creamy once it cools.
Okay, that makes sense, but it sounds like that's only half the story.
It is. Achieving that perfect concentration is only half the battle. The other half is making sure that when the sugar finally does crystallize, it does so in microscopic formations.
And if it doesn't?
If you let too many large sugar crystals form too early, you get that gritty, grainy result instead of the smooth, melt-in-your-mouth texture that everybody wants.
That's the critical scientific challenge then. And it's where the tiny details in these traditional recipes really, really shine. I was fascinated by the instructions for the buttermilk fudge.
Yeah.
It seems to address that exact problem of premature crystallization head on.
It does. That recipe is intensely focused on eliminating what we call nucleation sites.
Nucleation sites.
They're just tiny imperfections or existing crystals that large, undesirable crystals can rapidly form around. The instruction explicitly tells the cook to rinse sugar crystals, clinging to pan side, with the use of a brush immersed in warm water.
That is such a vivid image. It sounds like something out of a chemistry lab, not a kitchen.
It pretty much is.
Why is that little pan rinse so essential?
Because those tiny clinging crystals, the ones that get splashed up during the boil, they act like chemical magnets. If even one of them falls back into that boiling supersaturated syrup,
The whole batch just goes.
the whole batch gets the message. Start crystallizing now. And that rapid, uncontrolled crystallization leads to big, abrasive sugar grains. That warm water rinse has basically sterilized the pan sides. It dissolves those early crystals and makes sure that only the controlled cooling and beating process dictates when crystallization happens.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's look at a recipe that uses this high heat method, but also throws in a challenging ingredient, the Amaretto fudge.
A great one. The ingredients are 4 cups of granulated sugar, 2 cups of half and half, and 2/3 of a cup of amaretto.
So you're incorporating a spirit right into the boil.
You are. You mix everything in a large butter-lathered saucepan, and the instruction here is crucial. Cook it and let it boil without blending until it reaches 238 degrees Fahrenheit.
238, so right in the middle of that softball window.
Exactly.
But I'd imagine the alcohol creates a volatility challenge, right? I mean, its boiling point is much lower than water.
It does, but in a mixture like this, the water content is so high at the beginning that the alcohol is sort of carried away slowly. The amaretto here is mainly a liquid base and, of course, a complex flavor carrier.
So where's the real mastery in this one?
It's in the post-boil technique. The instructions say to take it off the heat immediately and let it cool down significantly, all the way down to 140 degrees Fahrenheit before you start blending it.
140 degrees. Why that specific temperature? What happens if you start beating it when it's too hot?
Well, if you start agitating the syrup when it's too hot, say at 200 degrees, you're violently introducing air and stress into a system that's still holding a ton of heat energy.
And that causes
Incredibly rapid, massive crystallization. You get that grainy texture we talked about. By waiting until it's 140, you're ensuring the syrup is in a state of controlled supersaturation.
So it's ready to crystallize, but it's waiting for the signal?
Exactly. The temperature is low enough that when you introduce the agitation, the beating, the crystallization starts instantly and uniformly, which gives you those microscopic crystals and that smooth texture. 140 degrees is sort of the magic number for initiation in classic sugar syrups.
That's just precision engineering. Now, let's contrast that single batch complexity with the black and white fudge.
Oh, that one's an exercise in structural synchronization. It's highly ambitious.
Because you're basically making 2 separate batches at the same time.
Exactly. 2 distinct sets of ingredients, 2 separate softball recipes that have to be boiled and cooled in parallel.
And the base components look very similar for both. 3 cups of granulated sugar, 1.5 tablespoons of white corn syrup, 1.5 cups of cream. The black layer just adds 4 tablespoons of cocoa.
And the technique is identical for both batches. You boil each one to the softball stage, that 234 to 238 degree range. You cool them completely to room temperature, and then you whisk them until they're frothy and creamy before you combine them in the pan.
The challenge is all in the consistency.
Totally. If your white layer crystallizes perfectly, but your black layer is, say, too soft or grainy, the whole layered structure just fails when you try to cut it.
The use of white corn syrup in both of those layers, that's a key traditional safeguard, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely vital. We talked about preventing crystallization failure mechanically, by rinsing the pan. But corn syrup is the chemical safeguard.
How does it work?
Corn syrup is what's called an inverted sugar. It means it has both glucose and fructose molecules, which are smaller than the big sucrose molecules in granulated sugar. And when those smaller molecules are in the mix, they physically get in the way of the sucrose molecules trying to link up into those large, rigid, gritty crystal lattices.
So it's like a safety net.
It gives the cook a much wider margin for error, yes.
Which explains why pretty much every traditional recipe that isn't using a modern shortcut has corn syrup or some kind of acid, which does a similar thing.
Right, it achieves a similar inversion during the boil. But let's go back to that buttermilk fudge recipe for a second, because its detailed temperature and cooling protocol really sets the standard for rigor.
Okay, so we've got the buttermilk, sugar, corn syrup, and butter.
And the process starts by melting the sugar on low heat. Then you intensify to a moderate boil and cook it until it hits 236 to 242 degrees.
A slightly higher, broader range there.
Yeah, that probably compensates for the extra structure you get from the buttermilk.
And then comes this really dramatic, precise cooling instruction. It says to immediately remove the pan and place it in a sink with a 1/2 inch of tepid water.
Right.
That sounds like a total panic move. Why the immediate water bath?
It's not panic. It's pure scientific necessity. Even after you take the pan off the burner, the residual heat in the metal, the latent heat, it keeps cooking the syrup. It keeps driving off more water.
Ah, so it overshoots the temperature.
Exactly. That little water bath instantly stops the cooking process by drawing off that excess heat. It stabilizes the sugar concentration right where the thermometer said it was.
Yeah.
And crucially, It does this without making you stir or disturb the syrup.
So you're maintaining that state of supersaturation.
Precisely. You stop the cook, you've cooled it down, now for the whisking. The instruction says to whisk only after it cools and a thin layer takes shape on top. And you keep going until it loses sheen and becomes light-colored.
The loss of sheen, that's the key visual cue.
It is the ultimate indicator that rapid, uniform crystallization is underway. When the syrup is glossy, it's still a liquid solution. But when you beat it at the right temperature, you introduce mechanical stress and countless little air bubbles, which act as microscopic nucleation sites. This forces the sugar to crystallize almost instantaneously.
And that loss of gloss means that enough of the sugar has crystallized into these tiny, opaque, light-reflecting crystals that the whole mixture changes from a transparent liquid to an opaque, light-scattering solid.
Exactly right. And the instructions in this collection are so incredibly detailed. They actually give you guidelines for how that visual cue changes depending on the method you're using.
Really?
Yes. If you're using your hands, the mixture snaps with each movement. With a mixer, the waves become different. With a food processor, the mixture flows slowly into the middle once you stop. I mean, that is the definition of mastering the physical state change.
That's amazing. We should also pause to note the intriguing flavor variation in the buttermilk fudge.
Oh yes, the rum raisin buttermilk candy.
It's a simple swap, but it sounds so effective.
It is. You just replace the vanilla extract with a cup of raisins that have been soaked for an hour and a quarter cup of light rum, and then you drain them.
The draining step seems important.
Very. It ensures you don't destabilize the final crystallization by adding too much extra liquid, especially alcohol. But you get this complex, fruity depth from the rum-infused raisins.
Let's look at one more traditional one, the creamy blonde fudge. This one seems to be all about the power of absolute patience during the cooling phase.
Yes. It uses light cream, butter, milk, and light corn syrup, and you boil it precisely to 238 degrees F. But the key technique highlight here is total stillness.
Without stirring it at all.
That phrase right there, it's a common instruction in high art confectionery. That stillness ensures that crystal formation is delayed as long as possible until the temperature drops low enough.
Because any little vibration could set it off too early.
Any premature vibration or stirring could introduce those nucleation sites we talked about, and you'd get large crystals while the mixture is still too hot. It's only once it reaches that critical low temperature that you add the vanilla and start beating until the gloss fades.
So the goal isn't just to delay crystallization, it's to make sure that when it does happen, it happens everywhere at once.
Simultaneously across the entire mass. That's what ensures uniform, tiny crystal formation. If one part starts crystallizing before another, you're going to get a heterogeneous, uneven texture.
The whole process is about controlled energy management.
And crystal size control, yes.
Okay, our final traditional example in this segment is a seasonal one. The eggnog fudge. This one subs out the dairy base for a prepared beverage.
It's a beautiful application of the core science. The base is 2 cups of sugar, 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, and 3/4 of a cup of commercial eggnog.
And eggnog is already super rich in fat and sugar and often has stabilizers in it.
Right. So it replaces the traditional cream or milk base, providing both flavor and richness, while still demanding that precise high-heat method.
So it's still boiled to 238 degrees.
Correct. But then it's cooled dramatically down to a lower threshold, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Then you use a heavy-duty mixer to beat it until it thickens.
110, that's much lower than the 140 we talked about earlier.
The long cooling time is necessary because the high fat content and all the extra solids in the eggnog, like egg protein, they insulate the mixture. It needs a slightly lower initiation temperature for beating than a standard cream-based fudge, just to ensure you get the best results.
That's a perfect transition point. We've established that the traditional path is incredibly demanding. You need a thermometer, you need vigilance, you need precise cooling.
It's a science.
It really is. So now let's pivot entirely to the modern approach that lets you bypass most of that scientific rigor.
This next segment is a perfect illustration of how food science has, in a way, democratized confectionery.
How so?
These recipes use pre-processed, commercially stabilized ingredients, sweetened condensed milk, and marshmallow creme, which basically act as structural shortcuts.
They minimize the risk of crystallization failure and often just completely eliminate the need for a candy thermometer.
It's the difference between executing a chemical synthesis from scratch and using a prepackaged lab kit.
So where does that stability come from in those ingredients?
2 key factors. First, they have pre-inverted sugars or stabilizers that structurally interfere with crystallization, just like corn syrup, but it's already mixed in. And second, the high fat and protein content, especially in condensed milk, helps to coat the sugar molecules, which further inhibits the formation of those big crystals.
Let's start with the one called Best Fudge Ever. This seems like the gold standard of the marshmallow route.
Oh, the ingredient list is a celebration of commercial products. You've got 2 large Hershey's bars, 12 ounces of chocolate chips, a 7-ounce jar of marshmallow creme, vanilla, nuts, evaporated milk, sugar, and butter.
And the method is totally different from what we've been talking about.
A complete shift. Instead of cooking sugar and cream to the softball stage, you just simmer a mix of sugar and evaporated milk for about 6 minutes, whisking it.
Just long enough to dissolve the sugar.
Exactly, just to dissolve it and partially concentrate the mixture. And here's the magic step. That hot mixture is then poured over all the other ingredients, the marshmallow creme, the chocolate, the nuts, in a mixer bowl and just blended well.
So the heat of that syrup is just a tool to melt everything else.
Precisely. The marshmallow creme already contains the stabilizers you need, usually a combination of corn syrup, gelatin, and egg proteins. They prevent the large crystallization and provide the structure. The result is rapid setting and a reliable texture without any of the high-stakes temperature monitoring or the long, delicate cooling process of traditional fudge.
It sounds almost too easy. Is there a trade-off in texture?
That's the core trade-off, really. Traditionalists will argue that you lose the complex flavor development that happens during that high-heat, long boil, that subtle caramelization, the Maillard reaction.
But you gain reliability.
You gain unmatched stability. It guarantees a smooth texture almost every time, which, for convenience, is the top priority.
Now let's look at a hybrid approach. The butterscotch creme fudge. This one seems to use both the traditional cooking and the marshmallow shortcut.
It's a very sophisticated way to get the best of both worlds. The cook first prepares a dry mixture of mini marshmallows, butterscotch chips, and walnuts. And separately, the sugar, evaporated milk, and butter mixture is cooked to the precise softball temperature, 238 degrees.
So they're still getting that necessary concentration, but they get to skip the really rigorous cooling protocol.
That's it. Instead of cooling it down and beating it until it loses sheen, that hot, precise sugar syrup is poured directly over the marshmallows and butterscotch chips to melt them.
I see.
That rapid influx of heat instantly melts the stabilizing marshmallow structure and the butterscotch chips, which also contain their own fats and stabilizers. It ensures rapid setting and reliable texture without that lengthy, delicate beating phase. It combines the flavor depth of a cooked vase with the convenience of the marshmallows.
Okay, now for the ultimate shortcut. The one that requires no cooking at all, really, beyond just melting. The Choco Caramel Fudge.
The condensed milk quick fix. This one is maximum efficiency.
The ingredient list is tiny. Eagle brand condensed milk, salt, walnuts, caramel ice cream topping, vanilla, and chocolate pieces.
And the process is purely about melting. You just melt the chocolate pieces with the condensed milk and salt over low heat.
No boiling, no thermometer, no temperature regulation at all.
None, beyond just not scorching the chocolate. Sweetened condensed milk is basically milk with a massive amount of sugar already dissolved into it and highly concentrated. That pre-dissolved sugar and the high fat content ensures stability from the get-go.
And the cherries and chocolate fudge takes that efficiency one step further into the microwave.
A phenomenal time saver. It's sweetened condensed milk, almonds, candied cherries, chocolate chips, and almond extract. The technique is just stunningly simple. Blend the chicks and milk in a microwave-safe bowl, nuke it on HIGH for 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes until it's melted and smooth.
Wow. It's an exercise in sheer speed.
It is. It leverages high fat and high sugar content with rapid, targeted heating to get a quick set without any risk of crystallization failure. The only risk here shifts from chemistry to just simple scorching.
Let's look at one last example in this category, one that shows how these shortcuts allow for some artistic complexity. The Choco Snow Swirl Fudge.
A beautiful one. This uses the standard condensed milk, base chips, milk, butter, vanilla, nuts, but it uses a separate 2 cups of miniature marshmallows just for the swirl effect.
How does that work?
The first phase is just liquefying the chips with the condensed milk and butter like before, but the unique step is melting those separate 2 cups of marshmallows with a bit of butter, spreading that white mixture on top of the chocolate base, and then just twirling it with a knife to create that marbled swirl.
That's fascinating. You probably couldn't do that with a traditional fudge.
It would be nearly impossible. A traditional softball fudge thickens so quickly and so uniformly that creating a delicate swirl pattern is often out of the question. Here you have two stable, easily managed, pourable components you can work with.
So we've seen a whole spectrum in this convenience segment, from just simple melting to complex decoration.
All of it, avoiding the high-stakes rigor of the softball stage by leveraging chemical stabilizers that are already in the ingredients.
Okay, so we've established the chemical rules of crystallization and the two main structural paths. Now, let's move past traditional dairy and sugar and explore the truly surprising bases that Jatin Agrawal cataloged, ingredients you would never expect.
This is where it gets really interesting. This segment challenges the very notion of what defines a creamy binding agent.
Right.
When sugar and fat are your main flavor vehicles, anything that can contribute a smooth texture, bulk, or moisture is fair game, even things usually reserved for dinner.
Which brings us to the famous potato paradox. Two recipes here using potatoes: choco potato fudge and cocoa potato fudge. I have to understand how a boiled potato makes a successful structure for a sweet treat.
It's brilliant texture engineering, is what it is. Let's start with the chocolate potato fudge. The ingredients are just remarkable. 2 potatoes, a little milk, chocolate chips, peanuts, peanut butter, vanilla, and confectioner's sugar.
And the preparation of the potato is very precise. Boil them until they're super soft, pound them with milk to make them fluffy, and it has to measure exactly 2/3 of a cup.
Right, and the potato is acting as a creamy binder and stabilizer because of its starch content.
The starch.
Yes. When you boil and mash potatoes, the starch molecules, amylose and amylopectin, they rupture and release, and they form this gelatinous network that traps moisture.
So in the absence of heavy cream or condensed milk, the potatoes are providing that bulk and creamy texture.
They're essentially replacing the high-fat dairy, using starch and water instead. And that's then bound by the high-fat content from the peanut butter and the melted chocolate. The starch is a natural, simple thickener.
So it allows that massive amount of confectioner's sugar to bind into a stable structure.
Exactly. And notice the instruction to pound them with milk to create that fluffy texture. That aeration is important for the final light quality. Then you melt the chocolate separately, and you blend the mashed potatoes, peanut butter, and vanilla into the melted chocolate. The high starch content stabilizes the whole mix almost immediately.
Okay. Now, the cocoa potato fudge takes a slightly different textural approach. It uses potatoes, melted butter, shredded coconut, 2 pounds of confectioner's sugar, and melted chocolate.
Right. And here the potatoes are boiled and then rubbed through a sieve or a ricer.
That sounds very deliberate.
It is. It's to ensure the texture is absolutely smooth with no lumps. This potato butter sugar mixture is then combined with coconut and extract until it's frothy.
What's the big structural difference here?
The chocolate is poured over the set potato mixture. It's a topping.
Ah, so the potato mixture itself is the whole body of the candy.
It is. It's a thick, sweet potato paste that's stabilized by the sheer volume of confectioner's sugar. The starch and the butter provide enough structure to hold it all together without any traditional boiling or crystallization control. It's a no-cook candy technique, really.
The potato recipes are genuinely fascinating, but the next one introduces a savory element that, frankly, alarms me.
I know which one you mean.
Cheese and chocolate fudge, using Velveeta cheese.
It's a truly remarkable testament to the power of processed food science to create structural stability.
The ingredients are 1/2 pound of sliced Velveeta, a cup of butter, nuts, 2 boxes of confectioner's sugar, and powdered cocoa.
And the process starts by liquefying the Velveeta and butter over average heat, beating it continuously until it's smooth.
We have to talk about Velveeta for a second. How does this work?
Processed cheese is a stabilized emulsion. They use something called emulsifying salts, citrates, or phosphates, which chemically prevent the milk, proteins, and fat from separating, even when you heat them.
Unlike regular cheese, which would just get greasy.
Exactly. Regular cheddar would separate into a greasy mess. By liquefying Velveeta with butter, you create this incredibly stable, homogeneous, fatty, and creamy base that requires 0 cooking time for the sugar. The emulsifying salts guarantee stability.
So the Velveeta base is basically doing the job of the condensed milk or the marshmallow. It's providing a pre-stabilized fat and protein structure.
Precisely. This liquid base is then just added to the sifted confectioner's sugar and cocoa. And the recipe notes the resulting mixture is extremely firm.
And it requires you to compress it into the pan with your hands.
Yeah, that firmness is a result of the Velveeta setting so quickly once it cools, locking in that huge volume of powdered sugar into a dense, non-crystalline matrix.
Okay, but does it deliver a quality texture, or is this a major trade-off for speed?
It delivers a reliable texture, but it is vastly different from the smooth, creamy melt of a softball fudge. It's denser, firmer, and it definitely has a distinct savory undertone from the cheese.
It proves the structure can be achieved in varied ways, even if the mouthfeel is different.
Exactly. And if Velveeta is too adventurous, there's a more common dairy binder in the chocolate Philly fudge.
That one relies entirely on cream cheese.
It's a much simpler no-cook recipe that's all about a mechanical mix. You've got confectioner's sugar, softened Philadelphia cream cheese, liquefied unsweetened chocolate, vanilla, and nuts.
And the process is just steadily mixing the sugar into the cream cheese, then blending in everything else.
Right. Cream cheese is a simple emulsion, high in butterfat, but it doesn't have the strong chemical stabilization of Velveeta. Its structure comes from being softened first. When you mechanically mix that huge volume of sugar into the cream cheese, the fat and protein matrix of the cheese just binds the dry sugar particles together.
Still heat required.
Just chilling to set the butterfat. It's basically a candy based on a stabilized buttercream or frosting technique. It shows the simplicity of using high-fat dairy as a structural glue.
It's clear that in this collection, the definition of a stable confectionery base is extremely broad.
It is. You can get there with boiled sugar and cream, condensed milk, potato starches, or the stabilized emulsion of Velveeta. The only common requirement is a binder that can either prevent large sugar crystals from forming or one that can physically trap sugar particles into a smooth, stable mass.
So now we've covered the structure, let's pivot to the artistic element. The sheer range of unique flavor pairings in this collection.
Yes, moving beyond simple chocolate and nuts and into alcohol and highly aromatic spices.
Let's start with the liqueur and spirit-inspired flavors. The Butter Rum Fudge seems to be a shortcut method for an adult flavor profile.
It is, and it avoids the structural challenge of adding real alcohol. It uses butterscotch chips, canned vanilla frosting, pecans, rum extract, and nutmeg.
Canned frosting.
That's the key. Canned frosting already has stabilizers and a ton of fat, making it an excellent shortcut base. And the use of rum extract, rather than actual rum, gives you the flavor complexity without introducing excess liquid.
Because alcohol is destabilizing?
Notoriously so if you add too much.
Then we have a recipe that dares to incorporate alcohol directly. The Coffee-Liqueur Fudge. This one uses a 1/4 cup of coffee liqueur.
And it's an adaptation of the marshmallow and evaporated milk base. It absolutely requires the stability of that modern shortcut to succeed. The recipe incorporates that 1/4 cup of coffee liqueur right at the end, just before pouring.
Why so late in the process?
Well, if you boil the liqueur, you drive off most of the alcohol and a lot of those delicate coffee aromatics. By adding it right before pouring, you minimize heat exposure.
And the structure can handle it.
Because the recipe relies on the rapid cooling and stabilization from the evaporated milk and marshmallow structure, it can absorb that small amount of liquid and still maintain its structure. The fat in the chocolate and milk helps emulsify the liqueur and keeps it tight.
Okay, moving on to exotic and aromatic spices. The cardamom fudge is a beautiful example of integrating spice into the classic high heat method.
It's a demanding softball recipe, boiled to a precise 240 degrees F. It has sugar, milk, corn syrup, butter, and then a ½ teaspoon of ground cardamom, along with walnuts and pistachios.
Cardamom is a very assertive flavor. Pungent, a little smoky when you add it.
The cardamom gets added, along with the butter, after the initial boil. Then it's blended briskly for 5 to 7 minutes until it thickens and loses its gloss.
So a late addition.
Very late. It ensures the volatile essential oils that carry the cardamom flavor aren't completely boiled off during that high heat phase. It maximizes the aromatic intensity. And the choice of walnuts and pistachios is just a beautiful complement.
This confirms a key principle then. For a heartier spice like cinnamon, you can add it early, but for delicate aromatics like cardamom, late integration is essential.
We see that exact distinction in the cinnamon choco fudge. It uses 2 full teaspoons of cinnamon with unsweetened chocolate. It's a pure softball technique, cooked to 238.
And cinnamon's aromatic oils are more stable under heat.
They are, so it can be added earlier. And that level of cinnamon would provide a powerful, warming contrast to the chocolate. Very much a holiday flavor.
Finally, let's explore the unique fruit and dairy bases that change the underlying liquid components. The cranberry fudge is really inventive.
It is. This recipe understands that fruit, especially a tart fruit like cranberry, has too much water and too much natural acid to just be stirred in without causing structural problems.
So what does it do?
It calls for a packet of fresh or frozen cranberries and a ½ cup of light corn syrup. That mixture is boiled down until the liquid decreases drastically, down to about 3 tablespoons.
So they're making a thick, concentrated cranberry reduction.
Exactly. intensifying the tartness and the fruit flavor while stabilizing the liquid content. This intense base is then added to chocolate chips, confectioner's sugar, and evaporated milk. It ensures the cranberry element is intense, not watery.
A completely different fruit approach is in the chocolate pineapple fudge. This one uses pineapple juice as a liquid base.
Right, a half cup of pineapple juice with granulated and brown sugar. And this is a traditional softball recipe cooked to 236 degrees.
Pineapple juice is very acidic.
It introduces citric acid and bromelain and a complex fruit sugar profile. That acidity is a double-edged sword. It provides a nice tanginess, but it also naturally helps hydrolyze the sucrose during boiling.
So it prevents crystallization, just like corn syrup would.
Very similar. The resulting flavor would be notably tropical and bright, a powerful counter to the heavy sweetness of the sugar.
And lastly, the Country Fair fudge offers a twist on the traditional dairy component by using sour cream.
The ingredients are sugar, 3/4 of a cup of sour cream, and then your choice of extracts and nuts.
And the sour cream replaces the milk or cream entirely. It's cooked for 12 minutes to the softball stage.
Right. Sour cream is thick, high in fat, and acidic from the lactic acid. That acidity, again, helps hydrolyze the sugar during the long boil, stabilizing the mix against unwanted crystallization.
So it's both structure and a crystal inhibitor.
A fascinating dual function. And just like the traditional methods, it's then cooled and stirred for about 8 minutes till it loses its sheen and becomes smooth.
The journey through these 50 recipes just confirms that this seemingly simple treat is, well, anything but.
It's a masterclass in how to manage the state of sugar.
It really is.
I mean, what this deep dive into the collection compiled by Judd and Agrel really demonstrates is just the sheer breadth of chemical pathways you can take to achieve the same desired smooth texture.
On one side, we explored the demanding, precise, high-temperature traditional cooking. Success there hinges on meticulous steps. Rinsing sugar crystals, hitting that exact softball temperature, allowing for that controlled cooling down to 140 degrees, and then initiating that rapid, consistent mixing until the mixture loses its sheen.
It requires a real expertise in the chemistry of crystallization, temperature, and kinetics.
And on the other side, we detailed the quick, reliable stability that you get from modern condensed milk and marshmallow techniques.
Yeah, those methods rely on pre-inverted sugars, stabilizing proteins, and chemical emulsifiers to minimize the labor and the risk. And maybe most surprisingly, the methods that use non-traditional binders like potato starch or processed cheese to physically trap sugar particles into a stable matrix.
So for you, the learner, understanding these diverse methods means you don't just know how to follow a recipe. You understand the core chemistry of crystallization and saturation.
Yeah.
You now know how to manipulate texture and consistency across vastly different ingredient bases, from the acidity of sour cream and pineapple juice to the stabilizing power of Velveeta.
The ultimate synthesis here is that the goal of every single successful recipe is the same: to create a microcrystalline sugar solid. Every technique, whether it's traditional or modern, is just a different approach to making sure those crystals are microscopic, preventing that abrasive, grainy texture.
And here's where it gets really interesting, something to mull over that connects this sweet science to the rest of the culinary world. We've established that the most traditional recipes rely on the softball stage, that precise temperature and crucial cooling to control sugar crystallization and achieve a creamy texture.
That controlled crystallization is fundamental to confectionery structure.
So what other surprising foods, besides candy, require that kind of precise temperature and cooling control to get their unique, desirable texture?
That's a great question.
I mean, think about sauces like hollandaise. The egg emulsion has to stay within a specific, very narrow temperature range to avoid curdling. Or think about certain types of structured icings that have to be whipped and cooled meticulously so they hold their shape without collapsing into sugary grit.
Right, the idea of controlled failure.
Explain that.
You're intentionally forcing crystallization, but you're managing the crystal size so it's so tiny that it melts smoothly on the tongue. That's not unique to candy.
It's a profound principle of food science.
It is. The need for structure and texture often dictates a need for thermal precision. It doesn't matter if you're managing sugar crystallization in fudge, protein denaturation in a delicate sauce, or the stability of an air-whipped meringue.
The difference between success and grainy failure.
It often comes down to that single degree, or that one moment of stillness before you start the agitation.
And that ultimately is the sweet science of the softball stage, and the hidden complexity in that simple, sweet treat.